Why do we always assume the quiet ones have nothing to say? The door exploded inward like thunder splitting the sky. Hands where I can see them. The veteran support group scattered, chairs scraping, coffee cups shattering against tile in slow motion. Military police swarmed the Elmridge Vets Hall, weapons drawn, commands sharp and unyielding. Collie Ward stood frozen mid-sentence, her words dying in her throat as hands shoved her forward. Another pair twisted her arms behind her back. Cold metal bit into her wrists. You're under arrest for impersonating a federal combat operative. The lead MP's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Stolen valor, fraud. The other veterans stared, faces pale, bodies rigid. Someone knocked over a chair. Nobody moved to stop them. And Kali, she didn't resist. Not that night. Because sometimes the truth is so buried, so deep, that even screaming it out loud sounds like a lie. The evening had started like any other Tuesday. 12 veterans, mismatched chairs, a flickering soda machine humming in the corner. Cheap fluorescent light carved shadows across faces weathered by memories too heavy to carry alone. Kali had come every week for 8 months. Sat by the window, always 5 minutes early, always quiet, never shared much. But when she did speak, people listened. That night, though, she listened longer than usual. Trent Rollins had the floor again. Former Army, maybe. Or maybe just former something. His beer gut strained against an old camo jacket while he spun tales of glory, helicopter crashes, ambushes, hand-to-hand kills, stories that grew taller with each telling. Kali sat still, jaw clenching with every escalation, fingers wrapped tight around her coffee cup, until he said it. Single-handedly took down a Velian Arms compound. No backup, just me, a knife, and a prayer. Her voice came out low, but it sliced through the room like a bullet. That's not how it works. Trent blinked mid-gesture. Come again? You don't breach a compound alone. Not without recon comms and exfil route, especially not in Ashura province. That valley is a graveyard. Murmurs rippled through the group, shifting weight, exchanged glances. Then Trent laughed, loud and ugly. Oh, really? What would you know, grease girl? You fix mufflers for a living. You don't know a damn thing about war. Everyone knew Kali worked at Maddox's garage. Hands stained with oil, coveralls hiding everything else. Small, quiet hair tied back in a plain coil, easy to dismiss, easy to overlook, until she looked up and her eyes held something that made the air change. I know, she said, voice steady as stone, because I was there. Ashura, March 2020. We were tasked with intercepting a high-value weapons convoy outside Ridge 9. Intel was compromised. 4-person infiltration team. 0300 hours, we walked into a trap. Her left hand flexed instinctively, a nervous tick she'd never quite shaken. Trent scoffed, but there was something defensive in it now. Let me guess. You were Delta, CIA, or better yet Navy SEAL. Come on, lady. Women don't even pass selection, let alone lead field ops. Kali held his stare, unblinking, shadow tier. Viper 7, specialized deep infiltration. Call sign Phantom 7. Laughter erupted, some mocking, some nervous. Rollins pulled out his phone, face flushed red. You think this is funny? I'm calling this in. Stolen valor is a felony. You don't get to cosplay war. Kali said nothing. Just sat there, shoulders square, eyes forward while he made the call. The room buzzed with tension. Someone whispered. Another shook their head. And then she spoke again, softer this time, but with a weight that pressed down on everyone present. You want to know what real combat feels like? Her voice didn't rise, but the room fell silent. It's watching your teammate bleed out, zip-tied beside you, whispering your real name one last time. It's 4 months in a box too small to stand in, eating cockroaches while they run voltage through your spine. It's killing 3 guards with a chunk of broken concrete, then walking 38 miles through Ravelin Pass with a dislocated shoulder and no backup. She clasped her hands together. They were trembling now, but her voice stayed rock solid. And when you finally get home, they hand you a fake name, erase everything, and tell you to forget what never officially happened. That's when the door exploded open. Boots on tile, shouted commands, the world collapsing in on itself. Now, cuffed in the back of the patrol vehicle, Kali caught her reflection in the window. A 34-year-old mechanic. Quiet, unremarkable, someone who definitely wasn't supposed to have a confirmed kill list longer than most lifespans. But there, near the edge of her left palm, faint, jagged, and unmistakable, were 3 carved marks and a single curved line. A message she'd written the only way she could. Not to be seen, just to be remembered. Somewhere in a black vault file that officially didn't exist, under a name long buried beneath redacted pages, a phrase began flashing. Phantom 7 incident reopened. What does it take to make a detective lose sleep? 3 days. No confession, no inconsistencies, no cracks. Detective Nolan Briggs slammed the case file shut, the echo slicing through the dead-silent bullpen like a warning shot. Every other stolen valor case he'd ever worked unraveled in hours. Wrong acronyms, made-up units, blank stares when asked about field manuals or basic protocol. But Collie Ward was something else entirely. A damn enigma wrapped in motor oil and dead silence. Briggs reopened the folder, spread it across his desk like a puzzle that refused to complete. On one side, a woman with no traceable military record, no DD-214, no VA benefits, no service tags. Hell, her social security number didn't exist before 2021. On the other side, someone who made his 20 years in law enforcement feel like a crash course in make-believe. Red flag number 1 came during hour 2. Briggs had tossed out classic bait, invented jargon designed to trip up phonies. So, tell me about your time working with tactical soup sandwiches in the field. Collie raised an eyebrow. Detective, that's not military terminology. Soup sandwich is slang for a total mess. You don't put tactical in front of it unless you picked it up from a bad Netflix script. She wasn't being smug, just accurate. Strike 1. Hour 4 was worse. He brought in Master Sergeant Dana Creed, 18 years active, known for spotting fakes by smell alone. Creed grilled her on everything: basic training routines, advanced combat techniques, decision tree hostage protocol. Collie didn't flinch. She answered each question with the kind of offhand clarity that only comes from lived hell. Then came the mortar question. What's a close impact sound like? Creed asked, voice casual but eyes sharp, just to shake her. Collie didn't miss a beat. Close ones sound like a freight train wrapped in thunder. Distant ones whistle, high-pitched, almost pretty. But the ones that land right on top of you, they don't whistle, they just arrive. Creed went pale. Later in the hallway, her voice trembled. Briggs, I've deployed 3 times. She described that better than guys I've buried. By day 2, Briggs was making calls he'd never made before, to people who didn't pick up unknown numbers. One ex-federal agent finally answered. You're poking around in places built to stay unpoked, the voice said flatly. My advice? Log the report, file it. Forget this woman existed, but Briggs couldn't. Because on day 3, Collie showed him something he couldn't unsee. You want proof, she said calmly, leaning forward in the interrogation chair. She turned her hand sideways, palm partially closed, and exposed the edge of her left hand. Rough and ridged with faint, deliberate cuts. 3 lines, 1 curved slash below. At first they looked meaningless, scars from work maybe. But then she pressed her thumb against the curve and the alignment clicked. Grid coordinates. They stripped me of everything, she said. My name, my records, my life. But they couldn't take what I carved in when I thought I wouldn't survive. She looked up, eyes steady, unflinching. That's where the bodies are buried, and that's where the truth starts. Briggs stared, heart racing, mind unraveling. If she was lying, she was the most committed fraud he'd ever seen. But if she was telling the truth, God help them all. If she was telling the truth, then someone very powerful had gone to extraordinary lengths to erase her. And that someone was about to learn, in the most inconvenient way possible, that ghosts don't stay buried forever. He picked up his phone, hands shaking slightly. The number didn't exist on any public record. It belonged to a secure facility that officially didn't exist either. When the line connected, a voice answered, crisp, cold, controlled. This is Admiral Keene. And Detective Nolan Briggs realized in that moment that he'd just opened a door he'd never be able to close. Sometimes truth doesn't set you free. Sometimes it just shows you how deep the cage really goes. Have you ever seen someone's entire world shift in a single glance? Admiral Keene stood at the precinct entrance, perfectly still, scanning the building like she was calculating blast radius and collateral damage. She wasn't in uniform. Didn't need to be. Authority radiated from her like heat off asphalt in August. Behind her, two men in civilian clothes, faces blank, earpieces barely visible. Not bodyguards, handlers. Detective Briggs met her at the front desk, tired-eyed and tense. Admiral Keene, she silenced him with a glance sharp enough to cut through steel. You're about to step into waters so deep they don't appear on any map, she said. Where is she? Briggs led her through winding corridors, talking fast. Jurisdiction, chain of custody, reports. Keene didn't respond. Her mind was somewhere else, back in a sealed briefing room. Back with 12 women who had volunteered to vanish for the sake of a war no one would ever fully understand. Viper 7, the ghosts. She's been here 3 days, Briggs said as they approached the holding wing. Won't break. Won't change her story. Says her records were wiped. He paused, glancing sideways. Either she's the most dedicated fraud I've ever met or she's telling the truth, Keene finished softly. They stopped outside interrogation room 3. Through the one-way glass, a woman sat perfectly still at a metal table. Her posture didn't belong to a mechanic. It belonged to someone who still waited for orders. Admiral Keene felt 5 years of buried guilt rise up in her throat. She had signed the orders, buried the unit, lied to their families. She had killed Kali Ward on paper, but now Phantom 7 was sitting just 10 feet away, alive and very, very dangerous. I need to see her alone, Keene said. Admiral, this is an active investigation. I can't just. Keene turned. Her eyes held the weight of secrets Briggs would never be cleared to know. That woman isn't just a veteran, she said. She's a weapon. And if she really is who I think she is, then this isn't about stolen valor anymore. It's about something that could start a war. The door opened, closed. The sound of the lock engaging echoed like a judgment. Kali looked up, and for the first time in 3 days, something in her face cracked. Admiral, her voice was barely a whisper. Keene, Kali's breath hitched. You're supposed to be dead. Keene sat down slowly, studying the woman across from her. Kali looked like a civilian. Worn boots, mechanic's posture, no trace of a soldier, but Keene knew better. She knew what lived under that skin, and what never really died. Show me your right forearm, Keene said, voice barely above a whisper. Kali hesitated, eyes flicking to the one-way mirror. Admiral, they're watching, show me. Slowly, Kali rolled up her sleeve. Etched into the skin, faded now but unmistakable, was a jagged hand-burned grid of 5 dots, 2 top, 3 bottom, a phantom coordinate, not ink, not a tattoo, a scar she'd branded herself. Keene's breath caught. My God, Phantom 7. The designation hadn't been spoken aloud in 6 years. Kali turned, tears streaking down her cheeks. I've been trying to tell them for 5 years. But I don't exist anymore, do I? You made sure of that. The words hit harder than any bullet, because they were true. Keene had signed the orders, had buried Phantom Unit 7 in a locked file, buried 4 clearance levels below classified. Directive Ember Point had wiped them from existence to protect a war that never officially happened. Kali, you have to understand. Understand what? Her voice rose, 5 years of fury breaking through. That you left me to rot in a Velian prison while telling my mother I was buried with honors. That you erased my life and handed me a fake one in exchange. Keene saw the reflection of Detective Briggs watching intently through the glass. Maybe recording. This wasn't an interrogation anymore. It was a reckoning. The mission was compromised, Keene offered weakly. No. Kali cut in. It was sold out. Someone in your command handed our coordinates over. We walked into that compound blind, and they were waiting. Keene had suspected for years, but to admit it, to investigate it, would have meant hearings, fallout, maybe even prison. There were broader considerations, broader than the 7 women who trusted you with their lives, Kali whispered. Silence fell like snow. Then you want to know what really happened in Ashura province? Keene nodded, though every nerve screamed to stop her. Kali leaned forward, buckle up. Because what they did to me, what I did to escape, is why I don't flinch anymore. Keene stood, moved to the door. Briggs found himself ushered outside before his brain caught up. Keene sealed the room, activated a signal jammer. Kali exhaled, shaking now. They played our anthem on loop. Made me recite our names over and over while showing our bodies burning on screen. I held out for 43 days. Keene stared hollow, and then Kali held out her palm. Then I carved this. Grid coordinates to the last fallback point. Burned into my skin with broken glass and adrenaline. She smiled, bitter and broken. I walked 32 miles through hell. That scar led them to the rest. Keen's face changed. Kali. That escape triggered the drone recon that rescued Echo and Talia. Your pain saved them, all of them. Kali blinked, shattered. They're alive. Keen nodded slowly. But here's the catch. Every single one believes she's the only survivor. The room fell silent. When you bury the truth deep enough, even the people living it start to doubt their own memories. How do you apologize for erasing someone's existence? Kali's voice cracked, raw and hoarse. You left us in the dark while you stood in the light. Admiral Keen didn't argue, she didn't flinch. But her jaw clenched, and for the first time she looked old. Not by years, by weight. I didn't just erase your unit, she said quietly. I erased my own conscience with it. She turned a tablet toward Kali. Redacted files filled the screen. Mission logs, name rosters, fragments of lives buried under ink. Viper Unit 7 wasn't just a test, Keen said. It was a prototype. A last-ditch contingency when the rules of war stopped working. Kali frowned. Why 7 of us? Why like that? Keen hesitated, then sat down as if her rank couldn't hold her up anymore. Because you were the only ones who could do it, she said. Not because you were expendable, but because you were underestimated. That was the weapon. She looked up, eyes shining, not with pride but with regret. 7 women embedded as medics, interpreters, advisors. No one saw it coming, not even our own allies, and that's why it worked until it didn't. Kali's voice cut in bitter. So we were ghosts and scrubs with kill orders, and when it failed, Keen's voice broke. There was no extraction protocol because you didn't exist, not on paper, not in planning, not in politics. When the ambush hit, everything collapsed. Command, intel, jurisdiction, and me. She looked away, then back. And I didn't fight hard enough to save you, that's on me. She opened a leather folder, slid it across the table. Inside, 7 declassified reinstatement orders, 1 for each woman erased. These won't fix what I did, Keen said, but they're a beginning. You're being restored, rank, record, recognition. You won't be ghosts anymore. Kali's hands trembled as she touched the file, but her voice stayed cold. And the ones who sold us out. Keen's gaze sharpened like a blade. Already burned, 3 dishonorable discharges, 1 sealed tribunal, 1 turned asset, the others. Well, the shadows keep their own scorecards. Kali stood, taller than she'd felt in 5 years. This isn't over. No, Keen said softly, it's just beginning. That night, Kali Ward died in a fatal accident off Route 19. The papers called it tragic. The Navy said nothing. But in a secure hangar beneath Fort Arden, 7 women gathered for the first time since Ashura Province. Some limped, some wept. Some just stood in silence, staring at faces they thought they'd never see again. But they were together, not broken, not forgotten, and no longer alone. At the far end of the hangar, Admiral Brina Keen stood behind the glass, back straight, eyes brimming. One by one, the women of Viper Unit 7 approached the table where their old call signs, gear tags, and Viper Halo emblems waited like memories laid out for reclamation. Phantom 7, Echo 3, Talia 9, names that had been buried, identities that had been stolen, lives that had been erased, but not anymore, because some things can't be killed with paperwork. Some bonds can't be severed with lies, and some women, they refused to stay ghosts. The ghosts had returned, and this time they were writing their own ending. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. And when the world tries to erase you, the only response worth giving is to stand up, reclaim your name, and remind them that some fires never go out. They just burn quieter, until the moment they're needed most.